Thanks very much. And welcome to Men, Myths, and Legends, a powerful conversation on the mentoring culture of men and boys in the Black community. Today, we'll look at the legacy and future of mentoring among Black men and boys and how organizations like Big Brothers Big Sisters can play a critical role in expanding opportunities for positive relationships across generations. The panel is sponsored by iHeartMedia. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the panel. First, Big Boy. He's a popular nationally syndicated radio personality and actor, and his mama named him Kurt Alexander for those
Hello.
who need to know. Next, Dr. Makola Abdullah, the president of Virginia State University. And finally, Karan Butler, former NBA All Star. He is currently an assistant coach with the Miami Heat. And before we get started, gentlemen, I should note, Dr. Abdullah, I was one who saw that viral video of that crossover you have. So maybe I can get you and Karan in a game of one-on-one and get you going. But I welcome you all to the panel and greatly appreciate it. Listen, before we get started, I'd like each of you to tackle this. One of the things that I think we have to understand is we have to start to create new narratives for Black men and Black boys, creating something that hasn't always existed, and that's a safe place to give honest and open discussions about manhood. And we also have to amplify partnerships across media, higher education, staple and institutions in the Black community. How important, Big Boy, I'll start with you, do you see the idea of creating this new narrative?
Just growing up in Los Angeles, bro, and being in a position of, my mom's single parent, 7 kids, it's always a narrative that people try to create for you. And when I got into radio, the one thing that I did, bro, and even just kind of just growing up was I always tried to create my introduction. When I first got into radio, I was a bodyguard for a rap group called The Far Side. I fell into radio, and I just didn't want to be viewed as, the guy that's from Los Angeles or try to bring up a certain past or anything. So I created this narrative that every time you introduced me, you would introduce me by Big Boy, Kurt Alexander, former bodyguard for The Far Side. Not all the trials and tribulations or the bumps and the bruises that I went through, and not trying to get this street credibility so people can say certain things about me when they had an introduction. So when I look at what's going on now, there's so many different things that gear people away from us as far as social media, as the household, by being a father now. So when I speak to younger people, I tell them what greatness they have, the kings and queens that they are. Think outside the box. And when people say you could become anything, and it sounds so cliche, you could become anything. And we're starting to see that now with the aspirations of not just being an artist, not just being a basketball player, which are beautiful things, but now, we getting doctors, we're getting creators. My daughter is now coding. So just when we create those narratives, man, I think it's up to us, Brother Ed, to say how we want to be addressed, the way that we want to be spoken to, and understand how powerful we are, and not to be discounted.
And Karan, I share something with you as I was reading about your backstory. And I think that we have to get back to this. There was a time where we all understood that we represented not only ourselves, but our community. And I read how you had a run in with police, and it was looking at what your mother had to deal with at the end of the day. That really said, I can't keep doing this to her. When I was in junior high school, I went to a department store and tried to steal a shirt. Got caught. They called my mother, who was a teacher at work. And when I got home, man, she just started crying, saying that, I do all I can for you. And that was it. That was it for my criminal activity. Give me a sense of how we understand that this is bigger than just us.
Yeah, you know what? I'm glad you brought that up, Ed, and it's an honor and pleasure to, join this platform with all you brothers who I respect dearly. Um, I think about my mother and my grandmother and the sacrifices that they made, and every male in our family leading up to myself that went down that path of recycled behavior and recycled trauma and passing it on to the next and upcoming male and female in our family who all had correctional experiences, and I look back and immediately I wanted to address my trauma, and I immediately identified my problem and my wrong and not pointing the finger at anyone else. And I saw the hurt that I, had instilled in my mother and grandmother. And I was just like, damn, I just want to be different. I want to do something different. And I knew that it had to start with me. And I wanted to make them proud of me. So I started, doing things to, so I can possibly be the best version or the best visual version of myself or what I saw myself as. I started playing the game of, basketball, fell in love with it. I understood that, the path of the streets and that life would always be there. But I had to exhaust this opportunity with this gift that I felt that I had, that everyone told me that I had, that they saw before I seen it. And I started surrounding myself around people that just had me thinking different, had me out thinking outside the box. I'm from Racine, Wisconsin, population of 80,000 people, never been outside of a 6-mile radius, straight up and down and, north, south, east, west. So when I got exposed to different things, I started seeing the world differently. And, I eventually made my mother and grandmother proud, after I went down that new path. So it's very important for you to explore new things and not just feel like you're limited in this box, but also think about the people that sacrifice the most for you. For me, it was my mother and grandmother. For others out there, maybe an uncle or maybe, distant relative or mentor. And I know we're going to talk a ton about mentorship, but that's what it was for me. That was my why. I wanted to make them proud of me, and that's exactly what I seek out and try to do.
Dr. Abdullah, let me ask you about, I was teasing you about, the little crossover you put on one of the students, but it really does take me to a book by its cover and the definition of manhood. I play this dude on TV, so people think I'm a certain way, but I am not from suburbs of Detroit. I'm from Detroit. So this dude I play on TV was not the dude I grew up as, right? And my friends go, I don't know who that is.
Yeah.
I don't know who that N-word is on TV. That's not the Ed we know. Give us a sense of us embracing all of the sides. We need to be multifaceted as men and as Black men. You don't have to be one cookie cutter definition of a Black man.
Look, I appreciate you saying that. I think that was the exact point we were trying to make. And I also want to thank you for being in my house when I was growing up and being one of those positive role models for me. Same for Big Boy. I followed your career the whole time and listened to the Far Side and Tough Juice. I'm a huge fan. You have absolutely no idea. And part of the challenge, I think, is that people start to put us in these very narrow boxes, right? So, you may say Caron Butler is a basketball player, and then therefore you kind of put him in a very narrow box. But in truth, so many of us love the game and play the game. And the more of us that know as Black men that we're so well-rounded that when you listen to this panel, every brother on this panel has been through things, but also has a level of insight and intelligence to communicate that really comes across when you're able to see it. And so for people then to see, well, if the president can cross somebody over, or if Caron Butler can give an incredible interview, or if Big Boy can go from a bodyguard to radio, well, wait a minute, maybe I can do that, right? That we can open up the realm so that people don't think that, again, that the Ed Gordon that they see, because it's hard to be that pretend Ed Gordon that only shows up on television. But if they know that you've also come from struggle, that you have a wealth of well-rounded experiences, I think it starts to open up the door for people to say, you know what, that's not that far for me, that I can get there if I try, that I can keep some of my habits. I can be who I am and be on television and be a university president, maybe be an NBA ball player. That's a whole nother skill set, right? And maybe be on radio. And I think it's important that we show these well-rounded views of manhood so that the positions that we're in and the locations that we've gotten to through hard work, right? Gotten there through hard work. Yeah. And it's not something that's not attainable by people, that they can get there too. So thank you so much for bringing that up.
Yeah, one of the things I want to get us to is how do we change this sense of, because I've been doing these panels for a long time, and we've been talking about this for a long time. What do we do? And I'll throw this out to all of you. What do we do to make sure that we are moving from the rhetoric and talking about how to do this to the actual sense of changing these definitions, writing new narratives? Because at some point we have to start doing it, bringing it to fruition versus just talking about it.
Well, I think I'll pick it up first. I think part of it is, and this is going to sound cliche, but part of it is begin to love and appreciate each other, right? I mean, we can't develop a narrative together to move Black men forward if we continue to put our own selves in boxes where certain people can only be listened to at certain times. And that regardless of any level of celebrity that we may have or others may have, that doesn't make them the sole arbiter or the main person to begin to speak on the issues in our community, and that everybody has that voice. And so it's that real collective love to understand that we're all important, that we're all valued, and that we all appreciate each other. And I think that's a real critical part of us being able to develop that agenda to move forward.
And I also think that it starts on whatever scale it can start on. You know, when we think about politics, we think about, oh, it's just the president, but we don't think about what's going on locally, why our roads look a certain way, and we gotta make sure that we're straight locally on our block, through our city, throughout our county, throughout our state, and then it multiplies from there. So I think with us, we just gotta also have that dialogue. And that sounds like, you know, you could 10 years ago, 20, 50 years ago, but I think that the dialogue has to be increased with us. And the dialogue and the teacher comes from anyone. I always try to say, I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I learn from someone every day. The marquee may say Big Boys Neighborhood, but there are so many other people there that make me look like a so-called star, and I listen to them. And you have to have some kind of dialogue. We can sit here and talk about changes all the time, and maybe I can't get to the president of the United States, but I know that my neighbor, I can have dialogue with my neighbor. Then my neighbor can have dialogue with his neighbor, and that neighbor with the next neighbor, and we can change the block. And also, I think if we sit down and we really start to speak to each other, and we really have this open dialogue where we talk about change, but actually putting that shovel into that dirt and, you know, digging that first hole and getting the foundation together. It sounds easy, and I think if we really just apply it ourselves, we can realize how easy it is. You know, every time you do something, man, it's one step. It's one step. I can't jump a full block, but I know with each and every step, I can get down that block. So I think that if we have more dialogue with ourselves and have an understanding, and no one's a boss, either we're all bosses or we're all students or we're all teachers, you know, but we learn from each other and really create that dialogue.
You know, Big Boy, you nailed it on the dialogue tip, where real conversations like the one we have and like the ones that, you know, people that respect us and will observe this visual, they're going to take this food for thought and be like, damn, that was deep. I felt that was authentic. That came from a real place. And now it's truth. They speaking truth to power. Now it's like, what's the specific call to action for me to be better, to go out there and try to make an impact in my region or my area or my community. And I think more of that is happening right now. Before, people was just sitting back and just observing it and saying, this is the way it's just going to be. But I took it upon myself personally. I'll give you an example where I was looking at my trauma. I was looking at some of the things that I was going through. And I was like, damn, I got this platform. I got these resources. Let me go out here and just like speak loud about this unapologetically and see what happens. Fast forward to, you know, going to Connecticut, going through the House, going through the Senate, and getting a bill passed to address, you know, the SB 1059, where solitary confinement is an issue. Now, I never in my wildest dreams thought that, you know, I can move the needle on that social change, but it happened. I know that kids in the community never thought that, you know, the brother, what happened with George Floyd out there in Minnesota, that if they got out there, if they cried, they spoke their unpassionate realness from the heart, that something would happen, something would transpire across all 50 states and over 30 countries, that change would be sparked by that. But it did, and it happened. So I think people are starting to be hopeful and starting to have this dialogue more and say, you know what, I can drive change. And even the voting process, you know, being out there in that whole, you know, filling out the census and going out there, you know, getting a state like Wisconsin to turn, getting a, you know, Philadelphia, all these different states. It's like, this is the time. These conversations have to be had more so now than ever. And I'm just happy to see it.
And I think that with the last year, we've paid a lot of tuition into the School of Experience. We've seen where we had to really pivot. We had to think different. We had to be different. We had to live different. And also with Quran, we saw a lot of people that got a platform that never had a platform or never had an opportunity, and they used the platform very well, socially, getting out there, talking. We saw so many people come together to make some kind of change. And I think right now, bro, I tell people, I say, you know what? Always remember when you saw George Floyd, whatever you have, always remember what that felt like. That first moment, what that felt like. And use that feeling as energy. Use that feeling as fuel so you never have to feel that way again. Every step, every little movement that we make, and we've seen some great things come within the last year when we felt low and we felt like a lot of things were against us, even with just the pandemic. We saw people pivot. We saw great leaders. We saw great voices start to come out of that. And that's what I want to continue as we so-called come out of this.
Yeah, and black men have to understand the power that we wield. Sisters have already understood that.
Yes, sir.
You know, we have to Karan's point, get on the ground and say, this is what we want. The demand is what I've not heard enough from us. Let us move to mentoring, because I lost my father suddenly when I was 11. And to this day, and I will turn 61 in August, I have a mentor, a man who lived 2 houses away from me, who became a mentor to me. And to this day, if I've got a big decision, I call him. And as blessed as I was to have the mother that I had, I still needed a man in my life who helped me understand manhood, and it taught me lessons my mother could have never taught me, you know, as best as she would have tried to do so. Let me throw the idea of the importance of mentoring out. Dr. Abdullah, let me start with you. Because organizations like Big Brothers Big Sisters, obviously that's on the front end of that scale. And we should note that you'll be on the board of this fine organization. And the CEO and president, we talked with Artis Stevens before we got going, and he talked to us about 30,000 young men on the waiting list at the organization. And of those, the vast majority are people of boys of color. So give me a sense of how important mentoring is, and it doesn't always have to be formal mentoring.
It is critically important. I had an experience like yours, where I actually lived with one of my teachers in high school over the summer. Had some wonderful experiences at Howard University as a student, where staff and faculty mentored me and took this immature young boy who was probably too young to go to college and turned him into something. I readily say I would not be here today without mentoring. And the whole reason why I'm at Virginia State University is because I want to give back in the same way that people gave to me. Mentoring is terribly important. And that for all of us, it's almost the answer to the last question that you asked, right? What do we do? How do we get started? How do we start to change the narrative? Is that we've all got to reach back and give something to somebody that somebody gave to us. And that's critically important. As you talk about the video that you did, that was highly edited. I just want you to know I'm not half the ball player that was in that video, but the real star of the video is the young man who I crossed over, who is a young internet marketing sensation, who understands what he does, but doesn't necessarily understand the business. And that was part of us working together, me mentoring him as he mentored me, right? Mentoring him through the idea of developing his business and developing his focus to be able to do his work. And that's one of the most incredible things about this job and this position, and what you can get out of mentoring is that these young kids, I can't even call them kids because some of them are grown, but these young men are powerful, are strong, are really leading this world in terms of where it's going. And they desperately need us to be able to lean into them. And the value that we'll get out of it is just so intense. And so I'm a huge fan of mentoring like you. And I think that it's an obligation that all of us have to do for the world that we live in.
Yeah, I think mentorship is a must and it's a priority. And I think a lot of guys now are realizing that though young, we're relatively young, but we are the new ancestors. But my biggest thing is young people have to want to be mentored. And that's the bridge that
Right.
I've ran into over years, you know, not just hundreds, but thousands of kids that I've dealt with, you know, personally right here, specifically in this community, that you have to be okay with hearing unpleasant truths or, you know, people giving you their observation from a real perspective that the visual that you just don't see or don't understand or not probably even able to process, and let them walk you down that path to help you, you know, be the best version of you in your very near future. But it is a process, but I think it's so important that you humble yourself, that you put your guard down, that you find someone that you see yourself in or someone you respect, you know, authentically through and through, and that you find that person as your mentor. Have several mentors. You know, I'm 41 years old. I got 6 people that I rely upon heavily, like business conversation. I got a person that I can bounce relationship ideas off of, you know, if it's something in the household. Fatherhood, you know, we got a group of fathers that, you know, that go through the process. As a father of 5, I thought that was huge for me. And then, you know, just, you know, transitional people, you know, life coaches and things like that. So I think that it's very important to have, you know, that wide range of balance, you know, in order to shape your life to be the best version of you.
Yes, sir. And as I said earlier, just growing up, you know, with my mother and single parent and seven kids. I have 4 sisters, 2 brothers. My brother Keith, rest in peace. But with my mother, I felt like I had it all. I have it all. And we always felt like, man, no, I'm fine. I had it all. I had it all. And then as you start to look, you start to say, no, you know what? I do need some kind of male figure in my life that's positive. And I would look at certain people, and you were learning lessons, you know, without learning lessons. There's direct, and then there's indirect, you know. And there was a guy by the name of Augie Johnson, and Augie Johnson was in a group called Side Effect. And Augie Johnson is the man that named me Big Boy and put me in my first, you know, limo and red carpet. He was treating me like this star that no one knew. And he always told me like, hey man, one day you're going to be a star, brother. You're going to be a star. And not only was my mom so positive at home, but I also found a man outside of my house that would put that fuel in me that made me feel like I could become something. And with my life, bro, I've been through it all. I'm from Los Angeles. I haven't always been the big boy that's sitting in the seat as well, as we all have a story. But anytime I did do something that veered a little bit, or I knew that I was stepping out of bounds, I always had either a voice of my mom, of Augie, or someone that affected me enough that it would kind of change the decisions that I was trying to make. So when we're in a position now, all mentors aren't us. You know what I'm saying? Like you said, we still have mentors. I have guys that I sit and I'll run something past them, or they'll tell me, no, Big, don't do that. And I'll listen to them. It's not about Big Boy. It's about making sure that I'm in a position where I could be mentored as well. Every time I turn this microphone on, I have a responsibility to my people, to my community, to my listeners. I have a responsibility because people are watching and people are listening to me. And with that, I'm not preachy, but I don't smoke, I don't drink, I live life a certain way. And I'm hoping that there's someone out there that's soaking this up like a sponge and say, you know what? Well, Big doesn't drink and he seemed like he's cool, so I don't have to drink. And now we're seeing so many things now with vaping and, you know, people trying. When I was growing up, it was taboo to smoke weed. Everybody smoke now. So there's different things that I feel can pull people in different directions. But we got to make some of these other things of going to school cool. Being able to speak with someone, oh, that's cool. You know, oh, I don't know the answer, but I'll raise my hand. All right, that's cool. So mentorship, bro, is very, very important. And I feel that you could be mentored by anyone. And sometimes we don't even know it until we look in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, and that's what I meant about the idea of a new narrative. You know, the idea of saying that this is elevating you too. This is cool too. This is the way you should be as well. And it doesn't have to knock anybody else. It is just a broader sense of what is right. Dr. Abdullah, how do you deal with? I know I did some time at Fort Valley University helping them out with their communications department. I talked to a lot of young brothers while I was down there. And a lot of them talk about the idea of being hurt or not having role models. A brother walked up to me and he said, Mr. Gordon, can I just tell you something? He said, you are the first brother that I can relate to that was successful. Literally, he never had a conversation with a black man that he viewed as successful. Literally, he almost started crying. Because he said, I can't believe I'm having a conversation with you. And it had less to do with being Ed Gordon as it was just coming face to face with somebody he saw as successful. How do we reach out to these brothers and not make them feel inadequate, but make them feel like, bruh, I hurt as well, even where I sit. I hurt. Life is what it is.
Well, I tell you, first I wanna shout out these young people of today because I think they're much more in touch with some of their vulnerability than we are, right? Which is one of the challenges when you talk about men our age getting mentored. Is so many of us believe that we're supposed to have it all together, and so we're not supposed to look for help. And if you couple that not looking for help with trauma, sometimes childhood trauma and sometimes other traumas, and you're really looking at a recipe for disaster that really can move crime in our neighborhoods and move the kind of tough things that happen to each other. But I think for young people, I think since they are more in touch, I think a challenge for us is to keep them in touch, to let them know that it's okay that they've had trauma, that we have too. And I think us being able to share that we've been through some of those same experiences and being more honest about where we've come from, right? And the challenge, and not just the overcoming part of it, but the part that still hurts, right? I think being honest about that, allowing them to be honest about it, and then of course encouraging professional help in that ballpark too, I think can really help improve the entire mental health of our entire community. And so we have to continue to encourage this generation that, again, is much more in touch with their feelings, is sharing about how they feel. We don't want to tell them that they're inadequate. What we want to say instead is that you've been through trauma. So have we. You can overcome that trauma, and here are the tools that you can have to overcome that trauma.
And
Big
also
Big boy, let me ask you this and then follow up on that. What do you tell, because I get this a lot, what do you tell people who say, yeah, it's easy for you all to say all this because you made it?
Right. And you know what? I'm not preaching from a mountaintop. I've been through a lot of the school of hard knocks. I've made a lot of mistakes. Then, like I said, I paid a lot of tuition into the school of experience. I made a lot of bad decisions, and I made some good decisions as well. So when I speak to someone, I'm not speaking from, I'm you. I am you. I know what, if we're just sitting here, most of us that's on this panel, if not all of us, or anyone that's watching this, they know what walk backwards to my voice is. My producer, who's Caucasian, he doesn't know that. But walk backwards to my voice is interlocking your hands and walking backwards to a police officer. So I've been through a lot, but I've also been in a position where I've made different decisions. So when someone say, oh man, you can't talk to me about that. Yeah, I can talk to you about incarceration. I can talk to you about gangbanging. I can talk to you about going to school. I can talk to you about honoring your mother and honoring your father. I can talk to you about so many things because there's so many things that created this person that is Big Boy. And when people look at certain things, they think like, oh, I want the house or I want the car. And I tell people, I say, you know what, man, my life is not a buffet. It's an entree. You got to have everything that I've been through to get here. And everyone has a story. Everyone has something that they could have said, you know what, man, I could have given up. And that's why when I talk to people, I say, man, you got to see it through. You got to continue to work hard. Don't give up on, and it sounds so easy, but don't give up on yourself. Even when other people are kind of counting you out, do not ever give up on yourself. And I've been there, and I'm still a work in progress. I'm now a father trying to teach my 12-year-old daughter how to become a lady, and how my son, my 14-year-old son, to become a man. So I'm constantly learning as well. It wasn't easy to get here, and it's not going to be easy for anyone else to get to where they're going. But you got to make sure that you continue that pace of where you're going. And like we said, I'm not speaking from a mountaintop. I've been in the trenches with you.
I try to use this as an example, and I know it's a little biased because it's Black men, but I think of the scene that Spike Lee had in Malcolm X when Malcolm is in the police station. And he says, oh, but we're ready. And they go to that window and they see all them brothers just standing there, right? And he soldiers them and they turn in unison, right? That's what I'm trying to get us to understand, that how powerful Black men can be in unison. So as we talk about this, what do we do to make sure, and it doesn't mean that we're going to agree on everything, right? We can't even agree on Michael and LeBron, and that's cool. But there should be an avenue that we find agreement on. That we can not only better ourselves, but our community. What would you suggest Dr. Abdullah, I'll start with you, for us to look to start to find that kind of unification?
Ooh, I think that's a tough one, and I think part of it is that we are sometimes quick as black men and as black people to define blackness in a way that excludes people,
Right.
and
Or
we say,
monolithically.
exactly, exactly. So if you talk like this, well, then you're not black enough. Or if you listen to this kind of music, well, you might not be black enough. And if you don't like basketball, you might not be. If you don't, and if you think LeBron is the greatest player of all time, you might not be black enough. I just want to slip that in. And so I think part of what we have to do is to begin to define blackness in terms of its entire diverse platform. We are such an incredibly diverse people. We don't agree on all of the same things, but I think there's one thing that we can agree is that we want to make sure that all of our kids have the right opportunities moving forward. When Big Boy, when you were talking about, it's y'all have made it, I think all of us would agree. And again, we all have a certain level of privilege from the funds that we make. I don't want to minimize that because everybody's not in this category. But if you ask any of us what make it means, it would mean the ability to impart incredible lessons to our children that they can learn and then move forward from. And if we weren't able to do that, like money can't save you from that. Money can't make you a good parent, and not addressing your trauma is going to make you a bad parent. And if you've done that, then you haven't made it, right? And so we have to come to the very singular thing that we all want. We know that we want a life better for all of our children, that we want young black boys and black girls to have more opportunities than the one that we had, and that we want them to be freer of trauma than we were, right? Than the trauma that we faced. And I think uniting around something that's very, very simple and straightforward, and not worrying about the other things, what kind of hat you wear, or what city you rep, or whether your pants are cool enough, I think can allow us to develop the unity that can move us forward.
Yeah. I think also too, you have to find a way to find your happiness, and there's so many different versions of it. Some people go on vacations by the lake, some people go to the woods, some people go elsewhere, you know what I mean? So it's different versions of that, but I think it's also, different ways that people, that look like us can, find ways to move the needle on change. I think one of the huge things is education, real education, making sure that, our truth is being told, that you're seeking knowledge and finding the real reason of, where we are, and what we can do to move the needle in that space. I think also, financial literacy. So many things that we don't learn in school about checks and balances. And, Big Boy said it best, man, when he was talking about, some of the things that he had to pay. And he had a lot of paid mistakes, you know what I mean? And I think that I have too, and I know that I have. And I think that if we teach financial literacy and have classes and spaces where people can go and, no question is a dumb question, and enhance their knowledge on, that space, I think that's huge. I think also home ownership, I think that's a big thing too. People want to work to have something to pass off and, leave legacies. I think that's extremely huge right now. And last but not least is being engaged in local and national elections. I think that, being educated on who representing you, what some of your needs and wants in the communities specifically aren't being addressed, to make sure that those people in those elected positions do move the needle on the change that you want to see happen.
And I'm 51. I'll be 52 in September. And I spent a lot of years thinking that I did listen. And as I get up in my years, I wish I would have listened more. And when I speak with my kids, I talk to my kids and I say, or anyone that would allow me to speak to them, I'll tell them, I say, these are real precious times. And these are times when you learn. These are times when you got to take advantage of so many of the opportunities that's presented to you. And I tell my kids, I say, please listen to daddy. Now, I don't know everything, but I know a lot. And when I'm telling my kids, I'm not trying to lead them down a different road. And I tell my kids, I say, son, if I got beat up walking down this alley, then Jose got beat up walking down this alley, and such got beat up walking down this alley, I'm going to tell you, don't walk down the alley. Please listen to daddy and don't walk down the alley. Then if he walked down the alley, he learned his lesson. But at some point, he going to wish that he didn't walk down that alley. So I tell people all the time, pay attention. And it probably sound like, you know, and I get it in hip hop all the time. Oh, that's that old head. That's that old head, or that's that old, you know, pay attention to someone that has walked a path and trying to tell you how to divert, or trying to tell you what they feel the next great move may be. Listen to people. I continue to listen to people, young, old, whatever, male, female, whatever it is. I listen and I pay attention. And I think with our younger generation, I would love to say, you know what, continue to pay attention. Listen, because when you get to where we are, the same way, no matter what I have, I wish I would have paid a little bit more attention and not have more, but I would have more knowledge. You know what I'm saying? So
I'm going to come to each one of you for a final nugget, if you will, something that you want to impart. And we should note that, you know, forums like this are just the beginning. They should be. They're no panacea. You're not going to get the answer today, but it is hopefully something that gets you thinking. And to that end, big boy, one of the things that I try to tell, you know, my village is that there is a sense of, when you get a certain age, knowledge and wisdom that comes. There is also the idea of some of it is outdated. Some of it doesn't work for today. And you have to be understanding, and not all of that knowledge works for today. But I do tell people, look, the old school stuff that kept us here from slavery to today still works.
Yes.
And we can't continue to act like, oh, that's old. You know, you, to your point, you get a lot of, and I mentor a lot of people in my industry. And I'm talking about people who are now 35, 40, who are into this. They got it all and the opportunities. And I keep telling them, Doc, we tried that. We did that. You do it your way, but understand it ain't new. It's in a new box, but it ain't new. And so, you know, if all of us are smart, we're going to have to find ways to combine those generations and find a way to make it mesh a little better than we have in the past. We haven't been smart enough. Part of that is just ego, you know, the human nature of thinking that you know best. But we're going to find our way around that, hopefully. Let me go to everybody. Big boy, I'll start with you to give us kind of a favorite nugget for you, for Black men to kind of to look at and move forward.
You know, if there's one thing that I feel that we need to kind of look at is how powerful you are and how great we are as the kings and the queens, but just how powerful you are and what you can really become. And what happens with, you know, so many different outlets and social media is that we start to believe the clutter. Or we start to believe that we need to aspire to look like this person that's on, you know, a particular Instagram post or whatever. But I just tell people, find greatness in yourself. You know, I had people that told me I wasn't going to amount to anything, and I didn't believe it because my mom told me that I was great. You know, so if it's not your mom, if it's not your dad, if it's not your cousin, somebody believes in you. And if they don't believe in you, believe in yourself enough. Not to prove someone wrong, but to prove yourself right. So when I talk to people and I see the great things that I know are coming around the corner, and like I say, you know, I wish I would have listened more, but at my age, I listen to the 14-year-old Jaden. I listen to the 27-year-old Ani that's around me because I don't want to be the dinosaur. You know what I'm saying? So I listen, but I tell younger people, I tell our people that's going to be sitting in these seats, create what your narrative is, create your journey. And it sounds cliche, you could be anything. And trust me, I know, because I went from homeless to homeowner. And I never thought, not that I never thought, I always knew that there was something greater for me. And I worked at it. Did I crash the car quite a few times? Yes, I did. But I stayed on that path and continue to stay on that path and understand how great you are and how great you will be.
That's great advice, man, in terms of believing in yourself. I think we all have those stories of people who told us you can't. Mm-hmm. You know, the first interview I did with a news director before I even got in this business, drove up to Flint, Michigan, and interview with the dude, and he said, I saw your tape, and I'm thinking, okay, here we go, he's about to offer me a job. And my man said, you'll never make it in this business. Maybe you ought to try something else. And a few years later, I'm sitting in the White House waiting on the president to come in for an interview. And I said, I should call that someone right now and
Yeah.
say, hey, man, what you doing? Still in
Yeah.
Flint, huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm the dude that wasn't going to make it. Me? Oh, I'm just waiting on the president to come in.
Right.
You gotta find that belief in here first. Karan, what nugget would you give?
Yeah, to piggyback on what both of you guys touched on, I would just say, don't let anyone ever place, their fears or something that they couldn't accomplish on you. Stay being a dreamer. We was just having a conversation with a couple of my brothers yesterday, and we was talking about the importance of, staying that dreamer and, the vision that your 8-year-old self used to have for yourself. Have these lofty expectations like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna go to Paris, I'm gonna do all this stuff. And you just hoping and wishing. My big thing was I just wanted to be on the platform on Star Search and visit on Soul Train and do the dance line. And now I traveled the whole world, man, and done all these things. And I continue to go back to that 8-year-old kid that just was a dreamer, that just wanted to inspire, who wanted to show kids from my block, my village, that seeing is believing, you can accomplish anything. So I would just say, when your motivation runs low, fall back on your discipline. All the things that, that you envision and what it took to get to that, that vision, for me personally. And, just know that you can accomplish it. And you seeing these brothers right here, you seeing myself, letting you know that it's going to be hard work. It's not going to be like social media, that this instant success. But if you stay committed to that mission, man, it can happen. And there's resources out there, mentors that will really pour into you and make sure that you can go down that path and make it happen. Because there's a lot of people that want to help you out there if you're willing to work hard to do it. I'm telling you, I've seen it. I've run into it. I'm like, damn, I didn't even know you exist. They're like, man, people don't be trying to get it. So it's just like, man, if you stay committed, man, there's a lot of people out there that want to see you make it.
And we're not lucky, and we didn't fall, and you don't stand in a lucky line. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't stand in a lucky line, and every person here, we are the person that, as far as the people we're speaking to, we're them. Yeah. We them. There is no lucky line. There is no, we hit a lotto or something. Like, no, we are you.
And to extend what you said earlier about your mother instilling, confidence in you, I also tell people, just because your mama said you're great doesn't make you great. You've got to now take what she told you and work that to make yourself great. Because too many people buy into grandmama and mama telling you you're great, and you believe, oh, okay, I'm great. But now you got to work that greatness. You have to work that greatness, because I am not a believer. This is a little bit counter, but let me get to the end of the statement. I am not a believer that you can be anything you want. I'll never be a singer. No matter how many singing lessons I take, I'll never be a professional singer. But I do believe everyone has greatness in them. It may not, you may want to be a singer, but maybe singing isn't what God gave to you. But that greatness is in you. And sometimes the path we seek initially may not be the greatest path for us to travel. And I always say, find your path. You may become more proficient as a singer. Some cats will never make it to the NBA, no matter how many free throws they shoot. They may become more proficient in free throw shooting, but they just will never be. But maybe they will become an owner of an NBA team. Maybe that is their greatness. So I always tell people, shoot your shot, but be realistic about what your shot can be, and don't be disappointed if your initial dream isn't what your ultimate dream is. At the end of the day.
And it hit the rim, but stay on the court.
Exactly.
Stay on the court. Believe that.
Dr. Abdullah, give us a final gem, if you will.
Well, look, I think you all you took all the gems, so I'm gonna have to repeat everything that y'all said. I'm in the young people business at Virginia State University, and I love watching and being around young people. And I can repeat everything that you all said. One, that greatness is in them. Our greatness is all in them. And when we start talking about listening and listening to the voices of mentors and others, we're really talking about listening because we want to assist them in bringing their greatness out, right? We want them to listen because we don't want them to be the next us. We want them to be the best them. And that's why we want them to listen. I think it's critical for them in listening to all that we said, that they listen with that very critical ear, to listen to people that love them, tell them things. Doesn't mean that they need to do it, but they need to soak it in and understand where the message is coming from and then adapt it for what they need in their life. And Ed, they need to do the same thing that you do. They need to listen to the haters. They need to listen to them and use that information and use that as drive and determination to prove some people wrong. And so you listen to prove some people right. You listen to prove some people wrong. But I think the evidence of watching these young people after George Floyd change the world and get statues taken down and laws changed, things that we weren't able to do, right? That they did that with their energy because they knew that it shows how much greatness that is in them. And we want them to be the best them that they can be.
Well, gentlemen, I can't say anything but thank you. And this is a beginning, I hope, of a conversation for those who are watching to believe. And I think we all have to believe this, that we all have a role in the betterment of Black America and by extension, America. Because what America doesn't understand is the greatness of America exists when we're all great, period. And we're trying to take those shackles that they've kept on us for far too long off. And if any thinking person understands power, you understand the whole theory of a weak link. And if you're holding us down, then therefore that is a weak link. And we all have a role in this. So my thanks to you. My thanks for all of us, to Big Brothers, Big Sisters, for the invitation. And we hope this spurs conversation with all of you who are in attendance today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.